In the last few months, we would get to witness one of the greatest battles in hip-hop history. Kendrick Lamar and Drake's beef would spread through the world's speakers while ripping through the Billboard charts as well. Just like any other war that has taken place, there has to be a winner and a loser. What would seem to be a regular rap battle, though, can actually be turned into a fatal position for Drake from so many deals being made with an expected return of investment. Kendrick Lamar has placed Drake in a dangerous scenario not unseen before, in fact shared by some top-tier artists that he himself has compared himself to.
I could dance like Michael Jackson.
One of the most mysterious industry deaths known comes from the greatest entertainer ever. In 2009, a 50-year-old Michael Jackson was preparing himself to go on another world tour. The king of pop was unknowingly a genius when it comes to business moves. The problem was he had to pull in a large amount of revenue due to a very aggressive spending habit he had.
These will be my final show performances in London. This is it, and see you in July.
The tour, This Is It, was maybe not for artistic reasons so much as for the $400 million debt he himself and his business partner Sony placed him in. The fiasco started as far back as 1985 when Michael Jackson, through power of attorney, struck a deal to purchase the Beatles catalog for $47 million. The portal he used to make this acquisition happened to be the same portal he would fight against for the rest of his life.
So it's water under the bridge. You had mentioned dirty tricks.
Yeah.
Give us an example of what you would consider to be dirty tricks.
John Branca would be a name known to the MJ estate for years to come.
Well, on the whole Beatles acquisition, it was owned by this Australia, it was called a robber baron named Robert Holmes of Court. And he owned this UK company. The Beatles lost it in some tax scheme. So Michael had an investment committee and everybody said we were going to pay too much, don't buy it. Very smart people. The only time I ever got a power of attorney from Michael, he signed because he didn't want to fly to London and sign the doc. So I go to, and he said, I promise you if you come to London, we'll make a deal. So I went to London. I promised him that Michael would show up at his charity event in Perth, Australia to close the deal, and we signed the deal. I go to London and I sign the deal, and Richard, who's a client of one of my partners, calls me up and he says, what's that word they use for you American lawyers, prick? I had to do it. There was no way I could not close this deal for Michael. 47.5, but there was a background music library. You know, these are like music cues on TV shows that nobody cares about, you know, like a knock on it, that kind of thing. We sold that to Clive Calder for $6 million, so his net price was 41.5.
This deal would make Michael Jackson the owner of 50% of Sony's catalog. The two were flat-out business partners with the ATV music publishing company that they shared ownership with. The move would anger Paul McCartney, along with a list of many artists.
And it is true, he did ask me, he said, you know, got some advice, Paul? Yeah. I took him aside and said, diddle-a-diddle, and think about getting into music publishing. And I thought he was joking. He said, oh, I'm going to get yours. Well, I went, oh, he slapped him on the back. Right. Good one, you know, I thought that was a joke. And then I just got rung up and said, he's got yours.
The relationship would begin to sour. Michael's 2001 album, Invincible, would be the most expensive album ever to be made at $30 million. Sony felt nervous about their return from the album, which on the surface really didn't make sense because they failed to promote the album. The same folks that played dirty tricks to get Michael Jackson half of Sony rights would use even dirtier tricks to one day get the full publishing rights back from Michael Jackson. The reason they failed to promote the album was published by the popular site yourweb.com in a now deleted post from 2002 that can still be found on Reddit. To get $30 million for the album, Michael took out a loan from his portion of the stake in ATV. They made him place his publishing as the collateral. So by failing to promote the album, they were blocking Michael from paying back the debt. The album sales will be his main income to pay the loan back. This is while he also had a $400 million loan pending in 2001 to buy Marvel Universe to make all the MCU movies we watch today. The defining moment would come in 2002 when Michael would make an announcement. But wait, I'm gonna continue cooking, but do me one small favor. Apply pressure to that subscribe button.
I prefer to perform than talk, but... At Sony, I've generated several $1 billion for Sony. Several billion. And they really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing, and it usually is, but they never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them. We can't let them get away with what they're trying to do, because now I'm a free agent. Yeah.
Sony execs were shook in the thought that Michael would be taking his catalog not only away from Sony, but also out of spite while owning 50% of the ATV publishing.
They never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them.
A rivalry between Michael Jackson and Sony would commence, with John Branca representing both parties.
People from James Brown to Sammy Davis Jr., some of the real pioneers that inspired me to be the entertainer that I am. These artists are always on tour because if they stopped touring, they would totally go broken. The record companies really, really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists. Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
This was the moment when Michael Jackson will become worth more dead than alive. Soon after, a timeline of spooky events would occur. In 2003, MJ's image would take a huge hit when several minors would make accusations against him. This would be the first criminal charges brought against him. He had some in 1993 that were civil. Till this day, many question the motives.
I start looking, and I now look at the police tapes of the Santa Barbara police with the accuser. And I watched it, and I watched it again, and I rewound it. I watched it about 4 times. Every time I watched that tape, I would see the police saying to this boy, "It's okay, you can tell us. Tell us what Michael did to you. You can tell us, it's okay. He's done this before, we know." They were feeding him lines, and the kid is sitting there, and I don't really know. And it was so mind-boggling.
This move would deepen the wound on MJ, as it would dampen his ability to make money and pay back outstanding loan payments.
Neverland and many of his possessions were almost sold at auction.
He was no longer able to purchase Marvel Universe because all the investors backed out, not wanting to be connected to his name. At the end, Michael would beat the charges in dramatic fashion, with the FBI giving him a clean slate.
There's not one scrap of evidence that Michael Jackson ever harmed a child, did anything wrong, committed any crime. It's almost a vindication when you look at this. The FBI looked at all of these matters and said, there's nothing here, and I think that's the most startling thing which I've seen.
He also retained his ownership of ATV, continuing his plan to crucify Sony while also making money off of all of their publishing. And then
6:30, they loaded the body of Michael Jackson onto that helicopter, and in just a couple of minutes they're making their final approach now to County USC Medical Center.
In a plain white body bag, Jackson was transported into the care of the Los Angeles coroner. He will establish how exactly it all came to an end.
The death of Michael Jackson is a whole entire video within itself, full of shady individuals with questionable backgrounds. Dr. Conrad Murray will be charged and sentenced for the homicide, and after Michael died, almost everything corrupt that can happen did. John Branca, the lawyer that represented both Michael and Sony, somehow became the head of Michael's estate, after he vehemently no longer wanted to do business with John nor Sony. This was proven by a handwritten note given to Michael's attorney at the time on what companies he wanted to publish his future projects. On this list, Sony is nowhere to be found. The King of Pop was just as interested in sticking it to Sony as much as he was interested in making money off of them, and was adamant he never wanted to sell his half.
Music executive Tommy Mottola, who worked closely with Jackson at Sony Records for 15 years, considers himself the gatekeeper of Jackson's catalog. Tommy.
Well, in 2016, Sony finally got what they wanted in purchasing Michael's half of ATV from the estate for $750 million. This purchase would be the highest selling number for an artist's catalog. And who brokered the deal? John Branca.
You need to know the baby West Coast victory, man. Call him a bitch for me.
You trying to let this shit die down? Nah.
In 2022, an ecstatic Drake showed off a ring that once belonged to a rapper who found himself in this dangerous scenario as well. 1995 will be a turning point for probably the greatest rapper ever to exist. This after a chaotic 1994 for Tupac, who would get robbed of thousands of dollars in jewelry in Quad Studios, followed by being found guilty on SA charges. He will become the first artist ever to have a #1 Billboard album while being incarcerated. Failing to get his record label to bail him out, he was forced to make a deal with the devil. Suge Knight would bail out Tupac in 1995. Pac, now transformed in Machiavelli, will wage a war on not only his well-known rival, Biggie Smalls, but on an entire coast.
So that's what we doing. By strength in numbers, we coming to the East Coast to prove there is no fear, there is no problem, there ain't nothing but opportunity. And the opportunity is overthrow the government y'all got right now, which is Bad Boy and Nas and all that bullshit, and we will bring a new government here that will feed every person in New York.
He will go on to create not only hip-hop's double album, but the highest selling hip-hop album of all time, All Eyes on Me. At the same time, there were reports that Suge Knight was cheating Pac out of money, giving him advance after advance, gift after gift, while nothing was in his actual name.
So, yeah, once he got with Death Row, he was with whatever them niggas was with at the time, until he was ready to leave that motherfucker. When he wasn't getting his royalties and getting his money and finding out, he wasn't getting paid like he was supposed to. He was ready to shake that shit.
Before that famous day in 1996, there were reports of arguments ensuing between Tupac and Suge. Machiavelli Records will be the next move for Pac, who was preparing Machiavelli's 7-Day Theory to be released as a mixtape, and his double album, One Nation, would serve as the final project for Death Row Records. Suge himself was having problems with his two main artists, Dr. Dre, who began to pull away from the role, and Snoop, who did not appreciate the signing of Tupac. The last thing Suge needed is the greatest rapper of all time leaving his label. But what if something were to happen to Tupac? That would make his catalog worth possibly billions, and could possibly make Death Row the most profitable label of all time. So for Suge, Tupac was now worth more dead than alive.
And look at Easy and say, what do I need a bat to, to force him to do a few things?
Even to this present day, it has been questioned what part he played in the death of Eazy-E.
Suge tried to destroy my record company.
Technology is so high, right?
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. So the kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there. People sell them all the time. They got this stuff they get blood from somebody with AIDS.
Yeah.
And then they shoot you with it.
Oh,
so
well, that seems bad.
That's a slow death.
Yeah.
An easy thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Tupac was a different story. Suge had direct investment in his career and would profit the most from album sales. Well, the unthinkable would happen on September 7th, 1996, with Suge having a front row seat.
And where you were leading and things you were seeing, do you believe that Suge had something to do with that?
What I believed in 1996,
yes or no?
What I believe today, I would more or less point my finger to yes than no. One of the bodyguards, after he was finished with a video shoot, they're walking him to the airplane. He told this bodyguard, who's a real good friend of mine to this day, he said, "I'm a dead man walking." And he said, "Pac, why would you say something like that?" He said, because I don't want to go to Vegas, and I got a bad feeling about it.
Now today, Keefe D has been charged as an accomplice to the murder, and some would say Suge is off the hook on this. That is until you dig deeper and realize Suge and Keefe D have been friends since they were teens.
Me and Suge played football together. I've been to his house, been to his uncle's house.
Even doing business after Tupac's passing.
Like I saw a couple of them where he was saying like, you know, he ran into Suge, you know, and they chopped it up. And
shook hands.
To this day, you can hear interviews from Suge referring to Keefe D that just don't line up.
At the end of the day, free Keefe D.
You know what's really interesting is that he is pulling back from Keefe D's own statements.
After Tupac's passing, Death Row will be overwhelmed with the hype over Tupac's unreleased tracks, and karma would pay a visit. His music would leak out to the world, and his unreleased tracks would accumulate $1 billion on the black market. 9 posthumous albums were released, each debuting on the top 10 Billboard charts. While it is definitely possible Suge had nothing to do with Tupac's death, Mr. Machiavelli would leave a cryptic message on the first few seconds of his album, Machiavelli, The 7-Day Theory. No matter what happens to Keefe D, we may never know the full truth on who or why they murdered Tupac. But in 2011, the FBI released a report documenting that Tupac was also receiving death threats from an organization called the Jewish Defense League, who are also labeled as a terrorist organization. In 2022, Drake would sign a $400 million deal with Universal, pun intended, because the deal would be a 360 for Drake, including his song recordings and visuals, as well as merch.
CEO Lucian Grange described the contract to Variety as an expansive, multifaceted deal that would cover Drake's recordings, publishing, merchandise, and visual media projects.
Of course, Drake is just not any artist. His catalog is worth more than the 70s, 80s, and the 90s combined.
So the thing that I'll say to you about the artist you just mentioned is that if you look at his music, he's bigger than the 70s, 80s, and 90s combined. I don't mean like one artist from that era, I mean all of those eras combined.
Not to mention the rumors of him having a similar deal with Gamma Records that Mike had with Sony. Joe Budden would get a chance to interview the CEO of Gamma Records, Larry Jackson.
But do you think that Drake's deals are a point of contention for his peers?
I can't answer that question. It's not appropriate on my place. I have to definitely display good cultural etiquette. So, do you like your water? Would you like any ice with that?
No, this is excellent.
These are all lucrative deals that have the potential of years and years of millions, maybe even billions of dollars in accumulation. Until this happened.
What's the password?
I see dead people.
The pop star's image took a huge beating for Pusha T that he was eventually able to recover from. But this one from Kendrick is turning out to be different. Drake's usual touch of helping other artists break the top 10 Billboard charts is showing some blemishes. His collab with Camila Cabello would prove to be underwhelming.
But the Camila Cabello song, at that moment, this is a woman with a racist past. And when people are saying that you have been devoid of, you know, the things that matter in the culture, like, yeah, you might not want to do the song with her at the point where that looks like, allegedly she had asked him like, yo, or he had asked her like, yo, let's hold up a bit. And it finally came out now.
Come on.
Yeah, that's gonna work.
For the summertime,
That's gonna work.
Coming off for the beef, perfect thing to do. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Even a deal that Drake signed with Nike would take a hit.
Now it's being reported that Drake's $460 million Nike deal has been ruined by the Kendrick Lamar beef. Drake has a huge deal with Nike, and Nike was likely behind the scenes calling UMG, telling them that they need to hurry up and end the Drake Kendrick Lamar thing because it's hurting Drake's public image. Due to deals like this, $460 million is a lot of money. Nobody's giving out that money without expecting, you know, a significant return on their investment. So
while this video is just my perspective, it's definitely not far-fetched.
There was a shooting that happened earlier outside Drake's Toronto home, and one person was injured in this.
Drake has even seen the writing on the wall and has moved to Houston near his management.
Yeah, we done gone country on y'all boys, man. We said we was gonna do it for a lot of years, and we doing it today.
Jay Prince, who in some ways is comparable to Suge Knight.
Said, dude, I ain't gonna leave him out. You know, I'm just real like this, you know, because, you know, be throwing rocks and hiding their hand, right? They be throwing rocks and hiding their hand. And I don't like them kind of individuals.
If this downward trend of sales continue for Drake, things could be grim at a time where his likeness has been sold off for profit.
Is Family Matters on the charts still or no? Nah, Family Matters is not on the charts. Drake, I think Drake got to drop soon. And by the way, this is like our little chart, like deep dive here. Drake got to drop soon.
A profit that could be hard for investors to tap into if the product isn't worth as much as it once was. On that note, all eyes will be on Drake's next album and how it sells. Because he could find himself in a position where he can become worth more dead than alive. Thank you for watching this documentary. And if you really like it, you'll like my other short form and long form documentaries that you can find right here. Well, anyways, you know how we like to end our videos over here at Moxy Approved, right? With that water. I'll see y'all here next time on Moxy Approved.
Please join my Discord, link in the description.